Hi everybody, it's Joni Young here. Welcome back for another painting tutorial. Today I'm going to show you 3 simple ways to paint flowers, or 3 types of flowers, a few of my favorites. And I'm going to be working on a 9x12 stretched canvas. I pre-painted it with neutral gray number 5 by Liquitex Basics. And I'm going to be using the following colors here. I've got them all here as well. We've got Hooker's Green Hue Permanent, Light Olive Green, Medium Magenta, Ultramarine Blue, and I've also got a little bit of Mars Black. The brushes I'm using today are from my set of 5 brushes, and I'll have a link below if you're interested in checking those out. We've got a 20 flat, a 14 filbert, and a number 3 round. So to start the first flower, which will be a daisy, I'm going to use my number 14 filbert brush. I've got a little bit of water here. I'll also be using a little bit of primary yellow. So I'm just getting a little bit of water on my filbert brush, and I'm going to start with a little bit of white and just a little bit of ultramarine blue. And I'm going to start over here. I'm going to start on an angle, turning my brush so it's narrow like this. I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure with the tip, then start to push and then let off. I'm going to load my brush again, and I'm going to overlap. So I'm going to start over here, about a ½ inch apart. Little pressure, pull and let off, pull and let off. You're just going to continue to go around in a circle, leaving the center empty. I'm going to add a little bit of water to my brush here, just to thin that paint out so I can go over it a little bit better and get a nice brush stroke in here. So this will be our first layer, and by tinting my white with a bit of that blue, we're going to have some shadows, and then when we come over with bright white tinted with just a little bit of yellow, it'll give us the lighter ones, and we'll also see ones that are in shadow. So I'm going to completely dry this off, and then we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that it's dry, there's a couple spots that are a little thicker in paint, so those are still a little bit wet underneath. I'm going to just take some white and the tiniest bit of yellow. Okay, and then I'm going to start coming in and overlapping. Same way. We're going to make some a little shorter, some a little bit longer, and we're not trying to space them out evenly to make a perfect shape pattern. Daisies don't necessarily grow like that or bloom like that. They're a little bit more sporadic and kind of messier with the placement of their petals. Okay, I'll dry this off once more, and then we're going to come in with our round brush. We're going to be taking straight white with no water, and we're going to be adding a couple of lines inside each of these petals, the brighter ones on the top. Okay, so now that this is pretty much all dry, I'm going to take my number 3 round brush, no water, just straight titanium white, a little bit on the ends of the brush to work with, and I'm going to add a few lines that go straight into the center. Now you can use a liner brush, you can use a flat brush and hold it narrow. If you used a flat brush and went like this, but it all depends on what you feel comfortable with. And they don't have to be even. Some can be a little bit thicker. You don't have to add exactly two in every one. And then we'll take a few areas and outline them in white. Maybe this one right here. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of light olive green, and I'm just going to gently paint around the circle, slightly going over those petals, because the yellow center of the flower, this yellowy green center, is actually over top, sits over top like above, and the petals go underneath it. So that's why we painted the petals first. And now what I'm going to do is take just the tiniest bit of hunter or sap, hooker's green hue. All 3 of those, any one of those 3 that I just mentioned will work. And I'm just going to lightly tap around here. In fact, I'm going to take, because that's not quite dark enough, I'm going to take just a little bit of black and no water at all. And I'm just coming around the very edges here. This is going to give us a little bit more depth. So what it's going to do is make this center pop out and create a little bit of shadow here in between the center of the flower and the petals. So you can see how it pops out a little bit already. I'm not going to do that around the entire flower though. We would see more of this with the flower just on an angle a little bit. And so this works. You can, if you have a front facing flower, you can change it and make it look like it's a little bit on an angle just by doing this, just by choosing one side to add a little bit of that too. Okay, I've rinsed my brush out, and the next thing I'm going to do is take my yellow, get a little ball of yellow on here, and we're just going to start dabbing it on. You could just stipple it on with a little stippler if you wanted, or a little filbert brush, but if you want to have a little bit more of texture, you can tap and dab these little, almost like little beads. They're little seeds, but kind of resemble, daisies kind of resemble sunflowers. Maybe they're in the same family. I'm just going to take a little bit more of the light olive green now, and I'm just going to add it around the edge here. I want this to be a gradual transition and not just stop right there with the dark green and the black. So just add a little bit more like that. I'm going to take a little bit of white And a little bit of yellow now. Get a little ball of that on the end. And I'm going to come in and tap and dab a little bit more. Now, working with acrylics, if you're familiar with them, then you know this. If not, this might be new to you, but they do dry a little darker. Sometimes a lot darker, depending on what your base coat is and what kind of canvas you're working with, what kind of paint you're working with, whether it's primed. But most often than not, it will dry a little bit darker even with any one of those things that I mentioned. So adding a little bit of white is important where you want your brights to show up. Now there are a few other tricks that can do that, but this is just what I'm doing today to demonstrate. We've got this dark gray base underneath as well. So that gives us a nice shadow to build up from to create more depth and highlights. But that final little bit of white and yellow works really, really well. Okay, now I'm going to be painting a stem, and I'm going to take a little bit of that Hooker's green hue. There's a hint of black in there too, and then I'm going to add a little bit of green, light green, to the end of my brush, and I'm just going to come. Maybe if it's on an angle like this, we'll pull, barely touch right there, and then pull and come down. Okay, now I'm going to take a little bit more of the light olive green. I'm going to add a little bit of white and come inside of it, because the stems are a lighter color and almost kind of like fuzzy looking. I just picked one out of my garden. We'll just make it a little bit brighter inside like that. And then I'm going to come in and add some leaves. So I'll take the dark green and then add a little bit of light green. So I'm generously loading my brush, and I'm going to add hardly any pressure, just using the point end of my brush, and then I'm going to push and then let off and twist. Very similar to painting the petals. Push, wiggle, and let off. I'm going to come in with just a little bit more dark green and black and come under the bottom side. Take a little bit more of the light olive green. Okay, I just rinsed my brush out, and I'm going to take a little bit of white with a light olive green, and I'm going to go over half of those leaves. I'm going to show you how to paint a simple stock flower, and I'm going to be using a little bit of Ultramarine Blue and some light magenta or medium magenta and some white. So this time I'm going to start with the stalk of the flower, and I'm going to be using my round brush, my dark green, and I'm going to start at the top just by adding a few little dabs like that. I'll take a little bit more of the sap green, a little bit of light olive green now, and we're just going to tap and dab those. I'm going to bring it over just a little bit curve it over a little bit to the right. And then all the way down to the bottom. Let's go ahead and take a little bit of white and light olive green now. You want to have it on the end of your brush like this. And come inside. Then I'm going to take those 3 colors again, not necessarily all mixed up to make one. It's kind of marbled on my brush like this. And I'm going to just add these little up and over. They're going to get a little bit bigger down here. You can start from outside and start pulling in a few little green tops of those flowers. The flowers aren't green, but there's a little bit of a green leaf type of thing at the right at the bud. Now, ways to make these stand out and look more 3D is by creating light and shadow. So we'll come in and create more shadow with a bit of black and green down on one side. I'm going to bring this one right in front here. I'm going to rinse my brush out, and then I'm going to add highlight on the top. You can wait for it to dry before doing this, or you can just paint it right over the top. And add just a little bit extra to this one here that I want to be more in the front. And if you want to create more sunlight hitting certain parts of your flowers, then just simply add a little bit more of your white and light olive green. And add a little bit more to the stem over here as well, and the leaves. You can see how it's drying a little bit darker already, and it's really easy to go back in, paint in extra shadows or extra highlights where you want to or need to. So I'm just going to dry this off. I'm going to be painting the flowers next, but I want to make sure this green part is dry so that I don't make muddy colors by mixing a little bit of that in with my blue and pink. Okay, so what I'm going to do is use my round brush to show you how to paint some of the flowers, and I'm also going to be using my filbert brush to show you how to paint some of the bigger ones here down on the bottom. So I'm going to be taking a little bit of pink, a little bit of blue, and I'm going to start here on the top by just adding a little gentle push and then pull up, push, pull up, and take a little bit more pink, push and pull over. Just get those little ones there. And then we'll come down here, push, go up and over, wiggle. We're going to start to make these a little bit bigger. Okay, so now I'm going to take my larger brush, filbert, and I'm going to start here at the end of the flower. Gently push, wiggle, pull that in. We're not going to see the bottoms of those flowers, but I want to bring it just underneath the canvas here so that when I take this off out of the easel, and if I want to hang it up after, I can see just a little bit right here and it doesn't look unfinished. And I'm going to add one right in front here. Because the flower is facing us, we're not going to see the stem, so I'm just going to push like this to make it a little rounder, and then come around like that. And then I'll add another one right here. Take a little bit of pink and white this time. And I'm going to come inside these bigger ones, then leave a space and pull a few lines at the top. I'm going to be switching over to my round brush next, so you can follow along if you just have a round brush and you don't have a filbert brush like that. So I'm going to go inside and then I'm going to pull up, inside, and then pull up and over. I like it when I have this thick paint to work with that's left on the canvas. Well, these ones are just budding, so we are not going to see a lot of detail on those. I'm just gently rolling this paint around the base just to make it a little bit wider. Take a little bit more white, and I'm going to come from the top here and pull some lines. A little bit more. Do the same thing. Slowly bring out a little bit of a pattern and some highlights. And come inside with a little bit more white. I like the way this looks inside these two, especially, so I'm not gonna go over those. I'm gonna leave them like that because I like that pattern. But it's personal preference if you want to make yours a little brighter. Okay, so what I want to do is come inside now and add a little bit of blue. And these are little foxglove flowers. So the foxglove flowers have these little speckled patterns inside them. You see it most on the bottom inside, and then there'll be smaller ones here and there, and they're not perfect dots. Some of them are kind of a little oval shaped or wiggly. Now you could use black, but it would look a little bit more like black if you were looking at one in real life, but I prefer to use this dark ultramarine blue because I think it will look pretty, and it's going to dry darker anyways. So I'll just add a little bit there, and then just a little bit in here. I'm going to come up and over right here. For the top part. Now I'm going to take my magenta and I'm going to just wiggle over that. Just a little bit in there. You won't see the little speckles on smaller ones that haven't fully opened yet. So using the ultramarine blue gives us a really beautiful shade of lavender when combined with this pink, or well, it's medium magenta, but basically pink. And the blue also helps to give us some shadows. Now I'm just going to come around the inside here with a little bit of the magenta and the white, just on the inside here, and I'm going to wiggle around some of these spots and just make this a little bit brighter. There we go. A little bit more of the white this time. And I'm going to add a few more lines. If you guys really enjoy painting flowers and love flowers as much as I do, I've got a whole playlist if you don't know already. I've got quite a few flower painting tutorials. I painted just about every flower. I think the only flower, well, I mean, there's tons of flowers out there. I don't think there's lots that I haven't painted, but one really like popular one I haven't painted yet is a peony. So if you guys would be interested in learning how to paint a peony, leave a comment below with yes. Okay, now I'm going to take my blue and my magenta, mix these up to make a beautiful shade of lavender. And I'm just going to create a little bit more of a shadow so the top part of the flower there shows up a little bit more. I'll add this in and around any other area that I need to. I'm just going to soften inside this one with a little bit of white. Okay, so adding just a little bit more. Now I'm going to work on our third flower, and I'm going to show you how to paint an iris. Now I have painted, I've got tutorials on purple and blue irises on my channel, but I don't have one that's more of like lavender pinky with a little bit of yellow in there. There's lots of different types of irises, but I really wanted to use these colors today and show you an iris in that color palette. Okay, so for this iris, I'm going to be using my 20 flat brush, and I'm going to show you how to put a few different colors on it, and we're going to kind of go in a little tight wiggle like this and pull around to create some really neat swirly patterns and movement in our petals. So I'm going to get my brush a bit wet, and I'm going to take some magenta, some yellow, and a little bit of white. So all three colors on here. And I'm going to go up. Pick up a little bit more white and yellow. I'm going to pull and sweep down. Load up those three colors on there again, and then I'm going to just wiggle up a little bit in the center. And then just swirl over right back to the center here. I'm going to take some white, just white only. And just add a few little white frilly edges. And then I'm going to take a bit of that white and swirl, blend that out. So see all the different tones that we get by doing that. My medium magenta. All three colors again. And I'm going to wiggle in and then pull like this. Out this way now. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Pull up like that. I'll take a little bit more magenta this time. And I'm going to come inside. Same with this one. Wiggle, wiggle, pull, sweep, back in. We're going to come inside and add a little bit more there. And now we're going to add our bigger one. The biggest one that's in the middle here. I'm going to scoop out like this. Scoop out like this, so this petal is going to come in front. We're going to wiggle, fan those edges out, and then I don't want to cover up my pretty little foxglove here, so I'll just leave that. We're going to lightly pull and scoop. I'll take a little bit extra white. And gonna bring a little scoop right here. We're gonna leave a space for the center. Let's take a little bit more so you've got a decent amount on the end of your brush to work with. And we want the edges of the flower petals to be white. I'm going to come up here and add a little bit more white now. Okay, now I'm going to take a bit of white, not a whole lot, just a little bit, and I'm going to pull, scoop, when you barely touch and just lightly pull, you can create that pretty sweepy pattern. You create all those little lines. Okay, now I'm going to take my round brush and I'm going to add a little bit of yellow inside here. Add a little bit of yellow on the edges. Take a little bit of white. A little bit of white with a yellow to make it a little bit brighter. And I'm going to mix my yellow, magenta, and white. And just make a few more ruffles. A little bit more white. We're going to pop this side out with another ruffle. We're going to add a few little lines. So we're going to start from here. We're going to follow that pattern. We're going to come down here. We're going to choose a few areas. We're going to add extra white. And create these little narrow triangles, which are kind of folds in the iris petal. The ones that are catching the light and then are up are these lighter ones that we're painting. And the other petals on this side. There's a bit of a swirly pattern there as well. And this one we can't see very well because our front petal is in front of that. Okay, I'm going to build up a little bit of magenta and yellow to make this pinky orange color that I love. I'm going to add a little bit right there. I'm going to add a few lines from the base of this petal. Add a little dab in here for some crinkled edges. I love creating the movement in petals. I think it's kind of like painting water, creating movement with lines in water, painting tree trunks and branches. But I think you guys can see, you know, why I chose a gray, or why a gray underpainting works really well, especially when working with kind of violet shades and pinks, purples. They really go together nicely. I'm going to take a little bit of blue with my pink orangey mixture here, not to start making my iris purple or blue, but just to make a darker shade so that I can add some more depth and a little bit of a more of a pattern here that will show up. So take a little bit more of that magenta. And I'm gonna leave the edges ruffled white-ish, or the lightest color. Just start gradually adding the darker shades. I'm gonna come inside this petal. And this is with just a touch of that ultramarine blue. You only need a little bit and it does the trick. And I'm going to take my dark green, a little bit of black, and then a little bit of light olive green. So I'm going to go pretty much right in the center here. Pull right down. And I'm going to paint a leaf. So I get those colors again with a little bit more of the light olive green. Pointy. Gonna add a little bit more light olive green now. And I'm just going to come along the bottom here. And add a few little stems and little leaves. I'm going to use my flat brush to show you how to do a serrated edge leaf. So I'll come right in here. Tight wiggles while you're moving and creating an arch. And the same thing on the other side. You can go from the base up or vice versa, doesn't really matter. Take just a hint of black in there. Add just a little bit of width on that one and a little bit of shadow. Okay, this one was really fun and relaxing to show you guys. So I hope you guys picked up a lot of tips and techniques in this video. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to see how to paint something similar like this in watercolor, check out my watercolor channel, Joni's World of Watercolor. I'll have a link below. Wishing you guys all the best. Thanks for being here and sharing my art journey with me. I'll see you all soon in another video. Bye!